Hi, kindergartners. Welcome back. This is chapter 17, and I just finished reading you chapter 16, where the Wizard of Oz is able to grant 3 of the wishes for the Scarecrow, the Tin Woodman, and the Lion. Now he had to think of an idea of how to get Dorothy back to Kansas. Remember, though, we're dealing with completely different worlds because Oz is not in our world. So if you remember, Dorothy got to Oz because her house was pulled up in a tornado and then dropped in Oz. If you remember, the wizard, who's actually just an old man from our country, he went up in a balloon and then fell down into Oz. So somehow both these human characters who we know, Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, have both traveled to Oz by the air. And from what we hear from all the characters in the story is that around the entire country of Oz, it's just desert, right? So now the Wizard of Oz, who calls himself a humbug, has to figure out how on earth he's going to get Dorothy back home. Chapter 17, how the balloon was launched. Launched means take off. Does that give you a clue? For 3 days, Dorothy heard nothing from Oz. These were sad days for the little girl, although her friends were all quite happy and content. The Scarecrow told them that there were wonderful thoughts in his head, but he wouldn't say what they were because he knew no one would understand them but himself. When the Tin Woodman walked about, he felt his heart rattling around in his chest, and he told Dorothy he had discovered it to be a kinder and more tender heart than the one he had owned when he was made of flesh. The Lion declared he was afraid of nothing on earth and would gladly face an army of men or a dozen of the fierce Kaladas. Thus, each of the little party was satisfied, except poor Dorothy, who longed more than ever to get back to Kansas. On the 4th day, to her great joy, Oz sent for her, and when she entered the throne room, he said pleasantly, "Sit down, my dear. I think I've found a way to get you out of this country." "And back to Kansas?" she said eagerly. "Well, I'm not sure about Kansas," said Oz, "for I haven't the faintest notion which way it lies, but the first thing to do is to cross the desert, and then it shall be easy for us to find your way home." "Well, how can I cross the desert?" she inquired. "Well, I'll tell you what I think," said the little man. "You see, when I came to this country, it was in a balloon, and you also came through the air, being carried by a cyclone. So I believe the best way to get across the desert will be through the air. Now, it's quite beyond my powers to make a cyclone, but I've been thinking the matter over, and I do believe I can make a balloon." "How?" said Dorothy. "Well, a balloon, you see, a great hot air balloon, is made of silk, which is coated with glue to keep the gas inside it. I have plenty of silk in the palace, so that will be no trouble. But in all this country, there's no gas to fill the balloon to make it float." "Well, if it won't float," said Dorothy, "then it will be of no use to us." "True, but there's another way to make it float, and that's to fill it up with hot air. Turn it into a hot air balloon. Hot air isn't as good as gas, for if the air should get cold, the balloon shall float down again into the desert, and we shall be lost." "We?" exclaimed the girl. "Wait, are you going with me?" "Oh, yes, of course," replied Oz. "I'm tired of being a humbug. If I should go out of this palace, my people will discover I'm not a wizard, and then they'll be vexed with me for having deceived them. So I have to stay shut up in these rooms all day, and it gets tiresome and lonely. I'd much rather go back to Kansas with you and be in the circus again." "Oh, I shall be so happy to have your company," said Dorothy. "Well, thank you," he answered. "Now, if you will help me sew the silk together, we'll begin working on our balloon." So Dorothy took a needle and thread, and as fast as Oz could cut the strips of silk into a proper shape, the girl sewed them neatly together. First, there was a strip of light green, then dark green, then emerald green. For Oz had a fancy to make the balloon in different shades of the color all around them. It took 3 days to sew all the strips together, but when it was finished, they had a big bag of green silk, more than 20 feet long. Then Oz painted it on the inside with a coat of glue to make it airtight, after which he announced the balloon was ready. "Now we must have a basket to ride in," he said. So he sent the soldier with the green whiskers for a big clothing basket, which he fastened with many ropes to the bottom of the balloon. When it was all ready, Oz sent word to his people that he was going to make a visit to a great brother wizard who lived in the clouds. Obviously, he's making that up. There's no great brother wizard that lives in the clouds. The news spread rapidly through the city, and everyone came to watch the wonderful sight. Oz ordered the balloon carried out in front of the palace, and the people gazed upon it with much curiosity. The Tin Woodman had chopped a big pile of wood, and now he made a fire of it. And Oz held the bottom of the balloon over the fire so that the hot air rose and would be caught inside. Gradually, the balloon swelled out and got bigger and bigger and began to rise into the air until finally the basket just touched the ground. Then Oz climbed into the basket and said to all the people who had come to watch in a loud voice, "I am now going away to make a visit. While I am gone, the Scarecrow will be your new leader. I command you to obey him as you have obeyed me." The balloon by this time was tugging hard at the ropes that held it to the ground, for the air within it was so hot that it made the balloon want to rise up into the sky. "Come, Dorothy," cried the wizard. "Hurry up or this balloon will fly away." "Well, wait, I can't find Toto anywhere," replied Dorothy, who didn't want to leave her little dog behind. Toto had run into the crowd to bark at a kitten, and Dorothy at last found him. She picked him up and went running towards the balloon. She was just within steps of it, and Oz was holding out his hands to help her into the basket when, crack! The ropes burst and the balloon went up into the air without her. "Come back!" she cried. "I want to go too." "Oh, I can't come back, my dear. Goodbye," called Oz from the basket. "Goodbye," everyone shouted in the Emerald City, and all eyes were turned upward to where the wizard was riding in the basket, rising every moment farther and farther into the sky. And that was the last anyone ever saw of the Wizard of Oz, that wonderful wizard. Though he may have reached Omaha safely and be there now for all we know. But the people remembered him lovingly and said to one another, "Oh, Oz was always our friend. When he was here, he built for us this beautiful Emerald City, and now he's gone and he's left the wise Scarecrow to rule over us." Still, for many days they grieved over the loss of the wonderful wizard and could not be comforted. So here's a picture of Dorothy running after Toto. You can see right here the hot air balloon, all those ropes, and that's where the wizard was. And it would have worked, except Dorothy went to chase after Toto, who of course she couldn't leave behind. So sadly, that's where this chapter ends. And if you noticed, the Scarecrow is now in charge. The Scarecrow gets to take over the Emerald City. All right, so let's check out what our picture book shows us. Let's see. Here's a great picture from the picture book of once again, there's Oz floating up in his balloon. And there's Dorothy calling out after him with her silver shoes on. Toto's in her arms finally, and the ropes have snapped. All right. Now, in the movie, same thing happens. Here is the Wizard of Oz. He is once again in his hot air balloon. And here you see Dorothy and Toto. Now in the movie, they're all in the hot air balloon. And Toto jumps out to go chase a kitten. So Dorothy jumps out after him. And once again, that's when the hot air balloon takes off. So the movie and the book are very similar, and that's what happens. The difference, the biggest difference, is in the movie, that is sort of where the story ends. Dorothy needs some help, and she gets it. And the story sort of ends in the movie. In the book, you'll see that it definitely did not end, because look at this. We still have some chapters left. So we have more to read to find out how on earth she gets home. And in a couple chapters, I'll explain to you how she gets home in the movie. It is different from the ending in the book. So stay tuned, my little munchkins, and there's no place like home. Mwah. Bye.